we're back. Corstian and I finally got together. We finally have our schedules aligned. So, you know it. This is our third time doing this, but we have our summer season series. This should be really, really fun. We're going to start with the NFC West, mostly because we still don't know where Aaron Rodgers is actually going to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers or not. So, by the time we get to him, it should be close to the season. And because of Aaron Rodgers and everything revolving around him, we wanted to give the Pittsburgh Steelers a fair shake once we know their full roster. And that's low-key the reason why we're starting out west instead of the North Division. So with that, Corsian, it's been a couple minutes. What have you been up to these past couple weeks as we hit into June?
Yeah, sorry, you cut out for a second, or maybe it was me that cut out, but yeah.
No, I'm just saying, what have you been up to?
Well, I buzzed my head. It's kind of fun. My siblings and I all did that, but other than that, nothing too much. Yeah.
Man, that was so funny. We haven't seen each other in 3 weeks, and such a core answer. But that Corsair and I were talking offline about this, and it sounded like funny. He's just like, I was like, "Why'd you buzz your head, dude?" And he's like, "Because it felt like it." And then the rest of my family did. So that was absolutely hilarious. He has a sister and a brother, and all of them. I think it was the sister's idea to buzz their heads, but that's incredible. I'm just trying to survive in like the 90-degree heat right now. Usually I started working outside, like working out outside, but today I was just like, man, couldn't get it out today, not before the video. So I'm like, I got to figure out where to exercise now. But it's brutally nice outside, and I don't know how to feel because the wind is like 30 miles per hour here. It's 90 degrees, but I feel great. It feels weird not having basketball and football for a little bit, even though the finals are coming up in a couple days. So shout out Oklahoma City and Indiana, small market teams we didn't expect to make it to the finals. So there we go.
Yeah.
Any predictions
Cool.
on who's gonna win that series?
So I mean, obviously OKC's favored, but I think a couple weeks ago when we talked about it, I said I think it'd be fun to see the Pacers win it, just with how crazy of a run just the team in general is having right now. So I'm a stick with them. I have to give them my vote of confidence. I think it'll be a tough win for Indiana if they do win it all, but I think it is technically possible, but it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, OKC's defense is like crazy, and I'll be recording with Diego in an hour about that, so that should be fun. Okay, alrighty. A team that just made a trade yesterday, great timing, San Francisco 49ers. They just got Bryce Huff for a mid-round pick from the Eagles. We're going to preview them. Now, going into the season from last season, they went all in on kind of their offensive players. Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Brock Purdy. And it seemed to be like a well-oiled machine. And it was just like, whoa, like this is scary. I don't think a lot of teams in the league have what San Francisco has. And then you have Christian McCaffrey get hurt for most of the year. They shut him down with like Achilles tendon, not tears, but like close to it when injuries. And that, as a Christian McCaffrey drafter, I was really frustrated in redraft. Brandon Ayuk goes down. I also had Brandon Ayuk in one of my fantasy teams and Chris Godwin. So when both of them went down in the same exact week, I was like, dang it. That's so now when you're looking at their roster, it's no Deebo Samuel because moved on. You're not going to have Brandon Ayuk for a little bit. It's DeMarcus Robinson might be out for a little bit because of a DUI. We'll see what that goes. But a lot of new faces, and especially on the defensive end, they invested heavily in that. Corsian, talk me through their roster and what do you kind of think as you look through their schedule and like understanding their key losses, draft picks, and the overall roster?
It's I don't know. It's a tricky situation with them because I think if the team is more or less healthy this upcoming season, they will, consistently be in that playoff race. I mean, like you paid Brock Purdy big money. A healthy Christian McCaffrey, I feel like keeps you in games. I feel like last season was the technical outlier season for Brandon Ayuk with not playing as good as I think a lot of people were expecting and coming off the year prior where he was considered one of the better receivers in the league. Um, but I think a big question that I think a lot of people have is just like, how are they going to deal with a lot of the losses they took over the course of the offseason? Like on the defensive side, right? You lose Tayshaun Gibson, who's just kind of like a rotational depth safety, but he's still, veteran presence there. You lose Dre Greenlaw, Javon Hargrave, Talanoa Hufanga, Charvarius Ward, Isaac Yadam, and like Rocky Sin. And Isaac Yadam and Rocky Sin, they aren't the biggest game changing guys, but they're still like whatever depth, And so it's a lot of, I think, stepping up that needs to happen on the defensive side. I mean, obviously they drafted Michael Williams, who I think could be an instant, he's instant starter. Well, he'll have to be. You just brought in Bryce Huff, but then you got guys like you draft Upton Stout, you draft Nick Martin, and you're just kind of hoping those guys day one can fill in for some of these big losses that they took over the course of the offseason.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing, right? It's heavy in the draft. They invested a lot in defense. And the one thing that stands out to me is they went heavy into like, you're not going to run the ball on us. If you look at the type of defensive lineman they have, obviously Michael Williams is a defensive end. They like him a lot because they remind him of Alden Smith and like some of his dimensions and like how he wins with power and relentlessness. I think that will help going on the other side of Nick Bosa. But then you look at guys like Alfred Collins, and then who else did they draft here in the fourth round? CJ West. Like, look at that combination with what they have with Jordan Elliott, Kevin Giggins, and then you already have your Tirkos Matos. It's like going to be very difficult to run the ball on them. And then you also have Bryce Huff. I think if you're looking a lot at like their breakout players, they're super young. Like, I was very high on Ricky Pearsall coming out of the draft. He's suddenly like the number one option, or like Jawan Jennings, who had a great breakout season last year. Like, those are your 1 and 2 receivers going into it because Brandon Ayuk's coming off of injury. Then you have Nick Martin. He's immediately thrust into the role as like as the Dre Greenlaw role next to Fred Warner as a rookie. Then you talked about Stout, then Jacob Cowing. Like, both Cowing and Pearsall have been spending a lot more time with Brock Purdy in the offseason in Florida, where he's getting his trainings. And then you have like guys like Nick, I'm gonna butcher his name, Sakelj. He's a guard. Like, he's a young guy who's expected to step up a lot. And you look at I think the biggest thing is their offensive line is different. Like, outside of Trent Williams, like obviously Brendel's been there for a minute, but like McKivitz, Barch, and like Pooney, and then Sakelj, which I talked about. Like, they're all young guys expected to step up and what once was like a really great offensive line. And it's like, okay, are you counting on Christian McCaffrey to stay healthy? That is the big thing to me. For looking at the schedule, I think they're going to take a step up from last year, because last year I felt like an anomaly. But I don't think when you look at the other teams in their division, it's going to be very unlikely they cross the 10-win threshold. But I had them around like 8 to 10 wins. I see that based on their schedule. A lot of it from like cannibalization in their division. But if you look at their schedule, it's like they got the Seahawks, Cardinals, Rams all within like the first 5 weeks. Not to mention Tampa's going to be better, Atlanta's going to be better, Houston, Giants are going to be better, Carolina, and then the Bears as well. But like, most of it's going to be within their division, so it's winnable. They can do it's one of the easiest schedules from what I look at it. But just to say their roster, like, they seem very even keel with some of the teams, given where their defense is at, versus where I would think of a San Francisco team. So they remind me a lot about like the Rams when they like traded all their pieces away and got a bunch of young guys.
Yeah. And so it's like, Yeah, I think despite their losses, I think they have a lot of younger players that they're hoping. I mean, it's really dependent on how well the young guys develop. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, like Ricky Pearsall towards the end of the season, he started looking pretty good, but like, can he continue that upward trajectory, that we saw towards the end of the year going into this season? Because like, not saying it's gonna happen, but like hypothetically, let's say Ricky Pearsall does not improve going into this season, and now all of a sudden, sure, you have Brandon Ayuk who's the baller, but then it's just him and Juwan Jennings as your two main receivers, and then you're all starting to rely on Demarcus Robinson, Jacob Cowing, which I don't hate as your wide receiver 4 and 5, but it like starts to fall apart like in a scary way if your young guys don't develop. But that's just kind of the nature of NFL. Of you need guys in order to maintain salary cap. You need to be able to develop your guys, and so far they've shown that they're good at developing their talent. That's why they've been so dominant for so long. Is like pretty much whoever they draft is able to find a role in the team, and so just being able to continue that will be obviously vital for this upcoming season, especially because the way they have their contract set up and the way their team is built, it's like you are playing to compete for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. One thing I thought they did really well was like replenish the running back room because they lost Jordan Mason to the Vikings and then also Elijah Mitchell, both like heavy contributors on their team. And they're really investing in Isaiah Garendo and Jordan James behind Christian McCaffrey. And I like Jordan James as a player. I think there's some things they could work on there, but I just thought that was super important. But yeah, when I look at guys like Malik Mustafa and Jair Brown, putting a lot of trust in them to do what they can. And yeah, a lot of draft picks, a lot of rookies on this roster. Who is kind of like your breakout player you're looking at? For me, it's Ricky Pearsall. I don't know if you think the same way, but
yeah, I'd say Ricky Pearsall's like almost has to kind of be their breakout. Just looking at like second year players, I mean, like you could argue one of those like like you could almost say like, oh, maybe like Malik Mustafa or like Renardo Green could be guys that you want to like step up, but like it's just like there's a lot of spots on defense that you really need guys to lock in. But then you still got guys that I feel like I trust that I mean, like sure you lose Dre Greenlaw, but you still have Fred Warner, who's like the best off-ball linebacker in the league. Maybe the number 2 guy if you have someone else in mind. You have Nick Bosa, who still is a dominant pass rusher when he's playing, and like you draft young talent, so it's like you have
and
enough guys.
Lenore's a solid cornerback to
You
have.
have playmakers. Yeah, so like you got guys top to bottom that you feel like I think at each level, at least one guy that I feel like you can trust. So then, I guess it should be Ricky Pearsall is kind of the next step up guy, or at least the second year breakout kind of player.
Yeah. Set the record straight. My bad at cutting you off, but Michael Williams, he's a rookie I really like out of Georgia. I think he's going to have a huge impact, especially learning behind Bryce Huff and Nick Bosa. So that's Will's my favorite rookie coming out of the draft. But like at least for the 49ers, like in their class that they picked.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Let's move on to the Cardinals. A very exciting team. If you look at what they did in free agency to up what they have on the defense, very impressive. They added guys like Josh Sweat, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Calais Campbell to already, and they invested a lot in the D line already. But when you look at their roster, just gonna scroll over here. No, this is the Rams. There you go. But if you look at their defensive linemen, it's like it's already been like star studded with like the type of guys they've had. Like Justin Jones, like BJ Odolari, Law Nichols, Zaven Collins, and then still not enough. So you draft Walter Nolan, you have Darius Robinson from last year. They're like 7 to 8 deep on the defensive line, not including their rookies, and that's really impressive from what they've had. Their defense is going to be much better. Then we talked about the steal of the draft, like Will Johnson Jr. That is going to be a key, as well as Walter Nolan. Some thought it was a reach, but I think, given the state of their roster, I think they're going to be one of the most improved defenses in the league. I have them chalked for 9 to 11 wins. I think they can make a
Mm-hmm.
playoff push now because of their defense and the state of it, but
Mm-hmm.
their schedule is significantly harder than the 49ers,
Yeah.
because you got the Bengals, Packers, um, and then of like the Texans still, like as like AFC teams, like counterweights that are really hard to match up against. And
Mm-hmm.
then on top of like all the teams that you have to face in the NFC South, who are going to be much improved, I think the Saints is going to be a winnable game, especially like with like the quarterback situation. But yeah, I think they're going to be able to make the playoffs this year. I'm pretty excited about this team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think pretty similarly about the team. Yeah, coming out of the draft, I had mentioned that the Cardinals had one of my favorite drafts. Um, with guys that like obviously on here the ESPN depth chart that we're taking a look at. Some of these rookies aren't slated to be instant starters like Jordan Birch and Cody Simon. But those are both guys that I felt had that potential at least within year one to start getting at least game day reps at a pretty consistent rate. Obviously, they brought in a lot of talent on defense, so like it's hard to see like Jordan Birch, who they drafted in the third, who I thought was a good player, to go and start up ahead of like Josh Sweat, Justin Jones. You have Darius Robinson there, Zayvon Collins. I'm a fan of BJ Ojolari, and so it's like their pass rush depth is really nice, and so I guess it creates a situation where Jordan Birch can get better at his game. One player I was really excited about was Cody Simon. He's a smaller linebacker, but he's just a really solid off-ball linebacker with great playmaking ability in the pass game, and the fact that he's at least for now listed so far in the depth chart, I think is good. I think just for the fact that he can work on his game and kind of get to NFL speed in a way that he isn't forced to like be a starter day one, but has that potential to do so later, especially because you get Akeem, what's his full name? Akeem Davis Gather, and like you bring him in, and so yeah, you just got top to bottom. I think they did a really good job just working on either developing or having new talent in that defense, like you said.
Yeah. So the defense is going to be much improved. I want to take a look at some of the offensive stats. Obviously, you had a lot of debate amongst like the rookie wide receivers last year with Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Roma Dunze. And Malik Neighbors had a phenomenal season, but I wanted to throw some crazy stats at you to highlight the significant problem. And I think Kyler Murray is part of the problem here. I think
Mm-hmm.
as a quarterback talent with scrambling, he's amazing. But like when trying to put his guys in best spots as a passer, he's got a lot of work to work on. But Marvin Harrison Jr. is not to escape blame here. 38.1% of his receiving yards came from 3 games in the entirety of last year. It came against the Rams twice and the Miami Dolphins. Other than that,
Mm-hmm.
his 53.4% catch rate was near the bottom of the league, where he was not able to like make significant catches, like especially contested. That was the huge issue with Martin Harrison Jr. coming out of the draft, and especially with a guy like Murray, who's I wouldn't put him in the top 10 of quarterbacks right now or top 12. That is a problem where your quarterback is not perfect and like it forces you to be perfect and whatnot. But the one thing that stands out to me,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll let you answer this. Do you think it could make a leap year two compared to where it was year one?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, just having that low of a catch rate going into a second season does sound. I mean, it sounds crazy to do, especially like with the draft capital that was spent on Marvin Harrison Jr. But I just think, yeah, having more time playing as an offensive unit should help. I know there was like I don't know the specifics about it, but like I know there was like people questioning like the scheming of the offense as well as kind of an issue with getting the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. So it could be a situation where it's like the play calling wasn't the best to both like to accommodate both Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison's skill sets to like collaborate and mesh as like a 1-2 combo. And so, if they're able to, touch up on that, just whatever, I don't know, it was mostly Cardinals fans complaining about it. So I was like, probably kind of legit because they're watching games each week and they understand like the scheming might be an issue. And so, that I think that's something that we could take into consideration in terms of like what happened last season. So I think just more time being able to look at how these two players play together can create, situations where it all works out more. But you also look at like the other weapons because like going into last year's draft, it was like, sure, there were some questions or like hypotheticals like, oh, maybe the Cardinals draft an offensive line or, they don't draft Marvin Harrison Jr. But it's like everybody just looked at that offense and they're like, honestly, outside of Trey McBride, they really don't have a receiving threat. And so, you bring in Marvin Harrison Jr. for that reason. And obviously teams know exactly why you bring in him too. And so it's easy to kind of like play specific, like, scheme around Marvin Harrison Jr., which is, it's tough to do as a rookie. I mean, some rookies can break past it. I mean, we look at Malik Neighbors. He was the Giants offense last season, and he was still able to ball out. But, I mean, it's still a rookie season having to deal with that. And so I think more time to kind of work on his game should inevitably make him have a better season this year.
I love that you mentioned that because GM Osborne's like, yeah, Harrison had room to grow. But, like, the thing that stood out to me that's really important is when Jonathan Gannon was meeting with Marvin Harrison about offseason development work, like Marvin Harrison already handed him a sheet of paper and detailed like what his plan was to address some of the flaws. Mm-hmm. And to see that come out of a player is like extremely important because if the player puts the development in his own hands, that's where you see the true like leaps and bounds of the growth from like year one to year two. And especially when you don't have to worry about combine, draft prep, like all these interviews and stuff going into year two, you have that much more time to work on your game. And I think he's in for a huge season. There's a reason why he was drafted high, but like, especially when you think about, you already have a star in place with Trey McBride. You have a 1,000-yard rusher in James Conner. What they're really banking on is for MHJ to be like that primary go-to receiver. Because they have a lot of great complementary receivers with Michael Wilson and like Greg Dortch, but like they really need that guy in MHJ to open things up. And I think he's really into a big year. The only question I have is, do I trust Kyler Murray to be a consistent thrower to him? That is the only question I have with it. But like, I think as far as a receiver and the fact that he missed, like he's always evaluating himself, even after practices, like. That's exactly the right mindset the elite players have. So I think it's one of those cases in like year one, not the best fit because great talent, but will take a while to get adjusted. Year two is where the sky's the limit. I would invest in him, trade for him if you're in Dynasty because he's going to go off.
Yeah. And like you said that like Marvin Harrison, he most of his yards did come from 3 games. And like obviously that's a concern, the fact that the rest of the season he was struggling to produce, but just the fact that he's able to have those types of big games shows that like it's just kind of a consistency issue where once he gets better at the fundamentals, that could be a more frequent occurrence throughout the season. So instead of 3 games this year of having these ridiculous games, maybe it's like 6 games next year, plus a little bit more of an middling average of the not superstar games, which I think would be a huge win for the team.
Yep. Alrighty. Did we talk about expected wins for
the Cardinals? And you said like 8 to 9 wins.
9 to 11, but yeah, around there. I expect them to be around there this season.
Yeah,
a little better than the Niners, but what do you think?
Yeah, I could see them kind of maybe just like one below that of like the 8 to 10 win range. Like you said, they do have a tougher schedule, and I think despite how great, like, I mean, we like, I think the defense is going to be a huge part of like, if the defense can mesh together quickly, we're going to see them on that higher end of that win column. But then if it takes a minute to see that defense get going, then I think they could have some early season struggles where they maybe lose games that they shouldn't. But then towards the end, I think they should be a pretty scary team to go against.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the defensive lineman they added. They really took the lesson to heart, like on what made the Eagles successful, and I think you'd love to see teams like truly invest in that. As far as the Los Angeles Rams, they were like a touchdown away from beating the Eagles in their home stadium, and I think not a lot is talked about them. I think if you look at their roster and you look at their schedule, Corstian, do you think they're closer to a Super Bowl than they were last year?
Let's see, who did they lose? Yes, I would say they are probably a little bit closer going into this season. I guess the one concern I have is obviously from now till mid-season or whatever, these depth charts will have changed, but you look at the rookies that they've drafted, and at least on the ESPN depth chart for now, none of them are listed as currently a starter. And I feel like that's the one bigger concern I have. But then I look at who they lost during the offseason versus what they have right now. And I think just swapping out Cooper Kupp for Devontae Adams does put them in a better position, just from the fact that I feel like Devontae Adams has a better availability with injuries compared to Cooper Kupp, and having him for arguably the entire season is what my expectation is. Versus having Puka and Kupp hurt on and off throughout the entirety of plus to whatever the Rams are trying to do. I don't know if I cut out on you.
Yeah, no, you cut out for a bit, but I got the gist of what you're saying. I think the big thing with them is they had 6 picks in the draft, right? So they really leaned into their continuity, especially on their front 7. They have a lot of young guys, but Troy Reader, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, Poona Ford, Braden Fisk, retaining and Jared Verse. That's a big name among all. Maintaining those guys amongst their back 4, which is really solid, where you can have guys. And I don't know if the rumors are true they're going to trade for Jalen Ramsey or not. They sound really close to it. But maintaining those guys, and especially this is a team that was really close to trading from Brock Bowers, according to reports. Really invest in Terrence Ferguson from the draft. That is somebody like Sean McVay had to have. I think they're going to have a different dynamic on offense. And I'm really excited to see what the Rams do this year, because it's the continuity between the teams that you're bringing that is going to elevate the team from where you think they are to where they are actually going to go. And I think just that consistency is going to help everybody in that lineup. Still there?
Yeah. I didn't hear the last bit of what you said. Okay. I don't know if you asked me something.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi just buffered. So what I was saying is I think the consistency of their lineup will really, really help, especially for continuity purposes. So, I mean, especially with Devontae Adams added now, he's a perfect fit for a guy like Stafford who likes the back shoulder, will trust the one-on-one throws, whereas Puka Nacua can win anywhere on the field. And he prefers to run people over. So you got those contrasting dynamics. A lot of times I thought with Kupp and Puka, they'd be in the same areas all the time, and they'd be hyper targeted. Now you can use different guys in different spots, and I think I would say they are close to the Super Bowl now. Looking at their schedule, probably chalk them up to 11 to 12 wins, because I think they're a stronger roster, even though some of their schedules are equally as difficult as the Cardinals were. Arguably more, because they had the Ravens, Eagles on both of their schedules, as well as the Lions.
Yeah. And I think you can maybe argue that they have a weaker roster than some of these teams, but I think just the Rams are a fundamentally really well-coached team, and I think a big part of their success last season was just the fact that their coaching is so good that despite injuries happening Things not necessarily going their way all the time. Just the coaching, play calling, scheming was able to make up for some of the deficiencies because, like, wasn't it like mid-season? I think nobody had Rams as a consideration for the playoffs, and then they just go on an absolute tear back half of the season, and so it's like it's a team that I guess has a good understanding of just like football scheming in general, and is bought into the system so that they're able to still stay competitive when things don't go their way.
Yeah. I think their defense among all like really improved in the last final games. And if they're able to get a guy like Jalen Ramsey, that's just going to make them even more dangerous. Thing I'm looking for is to seeing like who's the wide receiver 3 that steps up. Is that Mumfield? Is that Whittington? You lost to Marcus Robinson, so you're putting a lot of trust into Tutu Atwell. Quinton Cephas is one of my favorite receivers, just from his game. But like, I doubt those guys behind Atwell will get much play. So it's like, which one's going to stand out? I invested a lot in Blake Corum in Dynasty, so I'm secretly hoping he adds a second counterpunch. I'm really high on his talent from Michigan. But like, you look at their offensive line, largely intact. Like you look at their defense, like all 11 brought back. Like you still got Matthew Stafford. As long as Matthew Stafford's at the helm, like anything's possible.
Yeah, because like realistically, it's like I have the losses here. It's Cooper Kupp, DeMarcus Robinson, and Bobby Brown III. Like those are the 3 big ones that I noticed for him. But like you look at the team, and they more or less have just an exact replacement for these guys that they lost. With losing the Bobby Brown, you have Kuna Ford. You lose Cooper Kupp, you have Devontae Adams, and then you lose DeMarcus Robinson, and you have Konata Mumfield, which we don't know how good or bad he'll be, but like, I mean, Tutu Atwell's a decent enough gadget player for the Rams. And then when Jordan Whittington had high snap counts in games, he was able to produce pretty good numbers too. And so it's like, you got guys here that I think can fill in those holes. And if anything, you just got you got better consistency, which in terms of, I think is health issues with this next upcoming season's Rams. And so, yeah, I think it's good. And then, like you said, I'm excited to see what Blake Corum does this year. I know he was a big, highly talked about player last season. Just kind of seeing like, where does he fit in this Rams offense? Why isn't he getting as many snaps as I think a lot of people expected? Because obviously, I mean, like, to me, I felt like he was Michigan's offense, like he was the kind of like X factor of that team. But like, I mean, I understand like looking at some of the metrics. Oh, I don't know if I'm it. No, looking at some of those metrics, you can okay. Yeah, like some of his like metrics in terms of like just game speed is kind of like the question that I think a lot of people had, and that's why maybe he didn't get as many snaps. But hopefully, he takes that second year jump. If not, I think there's a reason why they brought in Jarquez Hunter in the draft. But either way, I think whichever backup running back plays decently well will be good. I mean, Kyron Williams, I still think is a good running back and will probably ball out still.
But you never know. We've seen it. We've seen it happen with Cam Akers. We've seen it with Todd Gurley. We've seen it with like Sean McVay, just like Kyle Shanahan, a running back is a revolving door. Like he will like Cam Akers one minute, and then he'll be like, actually, I like Kyron Williams better. And you just never know with him. So that's the only reason why I pick him up, because they obviously invested a lot into Blake Corum last year. So at some point he'll be valuable, whether it's like this season or next year. So it's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah.
What was your I have them around like 11, 12 wins. Do you have them around the same?
Cool.
Okay. I don't know if you caught it, but I have them around 11 to 12 wins. Do you think they're going to be the same record, or do you have them as like a lower ceiling?
I'll give them 12-13 wins. My hot take, I
Ooh,
guess. I
okay.
think I'll
13 and
I'll
4
have the
Rams here.
Rams. I'll have the Rams win the division.
Okay. Alrighty. I'm gonna save that clip
That's gonna be my.
and post at the start of the. I'm gonna save that clip. Your hot take of the year. I could see it happening. I really could. It's I don't know, the Eagles, Ravens, and Texans. That's gonna be very different. But as long as they don't get caught up with their own division, it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
All
it'll
right.
be tough. I think any one of these teams winning will be tough, but Rams I think have a good shot. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna move on to the Seahawks, my guy.
Okay, yeah.
Alrighty. So Seattle Seahawks, they changed so much as far as like starters, but at the same time, absolutely nailed the draft. We talked about it. Love what they did on the draft. But they lose George Fant, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Geno Smith, Rayshon Jenkins, and they like, especially for the quarterback and receivers, they like completely changed it. So now it's like Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp, Marcus Valdez-Scantling, along with JSN. Then you got like Torrey Horton, Jalen Milrose rookies, Elijah Royal, the backup Fant, and then you got Gray Zabel in the draft as well. All great picks. Damian Martinez sitting behind Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. I really like that pick for Seattle. I think they've done a phenomenal job. They're another team where it's like the continuity is going to matter a lot. And I want to highlight one specific player because I think he's going to matter. Witherspoon, Devon Witherspoon. He had a phenomenal rookie season, but last year he wasn't around the quarterback as much, and I think that's going to change. He didn't have any interceptions last year. He just forced one fumble, and it wasn't even a lost fumble. It got recovered by the offense in that situation. So he didn't have a single sack until week 17. And after 16 pass breakups as a rookie, he only had 9. So a little bit of a down year, but it's up to the DC, Alan Durr, to give him more opportunities to impact the ball. I think that's when the Witherspoon's at his best, and I think the continuity around him is going to help. But she's going to dictate how high the Seattle Seahawks defense is going to
go. Yeah. A lot of changes this offseason. It almost feels like it's hard to know where to start, just with like all the pieces moving in and out of the team. But I think the offensive line is going to be the key to this team's success. Last year, I know they had their struggles, and one of Geno Smith's greater traits as a quarterback is being able to evade pressure and keep plays alive and like just move around the pocket. And I know that is something Sam Darnold has historically struggled with as a quarterback, and so that's kind of like, sure, it'd be nice if Sam Darnold can do that better, but I think any quarterback, like that you bring in here, just fresh, you're going to want to have consistency across the offensive line. So I'm glad that they, drafted Gray Zabel. You have Christian Haynes coming into the second season. Charles Cross is here, so it's like you got guys you're hoping are able to continue developing, or at least can be an instant start like Gray Zabel, so that Sam Darnold can make the most out of just like the talent that they have on the team. Just because, you look at the talent, and I'm a fan of the playmakers on this offense. I love Kenneth Walker. I think Zach Charbonnet is a great compliment and can pretty much play as the starter if he needs to. Jackson Smith-Njigba is one of my favorite receivers going into this upcoming year. Cooper Kupp, I think the injury concern stuff does suck. But I think as a pure number 2 kind of guy with like lesser expectations, hopefully that keeps him healthier. I don't know, if that makes sense,
it's hard to predict somebody where it's like you don't know how many games he's going to play. I get it.
Yeah. And just the fact that this is definitely the superstar receiver here is definitely Jackson Smith-Njigba. Whereas I feel like with the Rams, it was Kupp and Nakua kind of almost for 50-50. And so it's like teams would more so scheme for both Cup and Nakua, Whereas here, I feel like, sure, they'll obviously scheme for Cup, but like it won't be as tough of a scheme compared to how they're going to scheme against Jackson Smith and Njigba. So I think he'll have a somewhat easier time. Maybe he probably won't reach, those record numbers that he reached a couple of years ago, but I think he'll be serviceable number 2 here. I do like Jake Bobo, the number 5 listed receiver here. Elijah Arroyo is actually one of my favorite tight ends going into this draft. That I think we said that, like, had it not been, just the Titans we had in this class, he would have gone higher, being more talked about. But like, because of how it went, obviously he wasn't as frequently mentioned. But yeah, so I think, well, while you see Devin Witherspoon is kind of the key, which I think he is part of it, just how the offensive line meshes together is kind of my own personal take of who's the bigger impact, or what's the bigger impact for this team's success.
Well, I mean, that's kind of been the story of the Seahawks the last couple of years, right? It's always been the offensive line and the offensive line woes. So you're hoping that Christian Hayes, Charles Cross, and Gray Zabel kind of dispel that theory, because you invest a lot in these players over the past couple seasons. But like the center and the right tackle, those are alarming things to me. You're now making me rethink my 11 to 12 win prediction with this team, because I really like a lot of what they do on the defensive end, in addition to the running back and the wide receiving weapons. But I did want to talk, because if their offensive line's a problem, then the talent that they have at running back with Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, and Damian Martinez is going to be very limited. Like, I'm talking extremely limited. Even if Sam Darnold gets hurt and suddenly you put Jalen Milroe in that is not the ideal situation you want. So it's all eyes on what they do, like, towards the offensive line and how they gel over the season. You're hoping the center and the right tackle continue that continuity amongst the talent we predict in the other positions. But you're 100% valid for thinking that.
Yeah, because like my rec predictions, it's like, if the offensive line struggles continue from last season into this season, we could potentially see maybe like a 7 to 8 win season for the Seahawks here. But if like they can keep Sam Darnold up and he's not being frazzled every single play, I think they do. I think they can live up to that potential that you mentioned of being like an 11 to 12 win team. But it just, like, that's a huge factor of like their success, is just like not having Sam Darnold frazzled and not making him see ghosts. But yeah.
Oh, 100%. I'm with you there. It's literally the story of Sam Darnold that we've been talking about since the very end of last season. Like, he looks like an elite quarterback when he has protection, but when he doesn't and when it breaks down, that's struggle. And I think the Vikings were able to mask it a little bit because just how great their offensive line was. But in Seattle, it's going to be a completely different situation. I applaud him for getting the contract, well deserved, because he had a phenomenal year. Like, you can't just expect Sam Darnold to make lemons out of lemonade, especially with a changing offensive coordinator, changing wide receivers that you're used to, different wide receivers that you're used to, and then expect him to like suddenly take this team to heights you've never seen.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see how this team goes. I do like their draft. Their off season, I'd say, is amongst one of my favorites, or at least the most exciting to me, at least within this division here. Just, you bring in a new quarterback, you bring in different wide receiver talent. I mean, even Steven Sims, he's a return specialist, so obviously, like, you're not expecting him to make plays at receiver, but you bring in guys to upgrade your special teams in particular. You literally have almost a new guy at every single position you could really think of on this offense, which is pretty exciting. So I think they'll be a fun team to watch. They might struggle this year and then kind of rebound next year. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case for this team. But, they're setting up things to at least stay competitive this year if things work out. If not, you might move off of Cooper Kupp. We didn't even mention DeMarcus Lawrence, but, it's like they're guys that it would suck to have to move off of. But, like, they're set up for either this year or next year, which I think is nice, at least from a team building perspective.
I didn't mention him, but like even without him, I feel good about this defense. I think the fact they have with him is just going to make them that much better. I think offensive end is going to take them some time to gel. All righty, guys. That will do it for the NFC West. Of course, before I let you go, who's winning this division?
Rams.
I agree. Maybe the Cardinals might push it, but I think it might more likely be Rams, and then Cardinals get a wild card spot.
Yeah.
All righty.
All right.
That's it for us. You follow us on our Instagram page. You better do it. Amon.a.mission. Our YouTube channel is Amon Mission, 3 words. Follow the finger pointing kind of down below. But, yeah, you got it. You got it. Corstian, anything to say to the audience? And are you curious about Aaron Rodgers and where he's going to go, or do you not care?
I'll first say peace out. And Aaron Rodgers, I don't think he plays this year. He said he doesn't want to play for the Saints. So it's like, okay, bro.
I mean, who does?
It's real, but still, like,
crazy.
If you want to play football, dog.
Yeah. Don't keep us hanging. All righty, guys. We'll see you later. Take it easy.
Yep. See you. Peace. Didn't work, but.